Well, welcome back. This is Ramy Romany, your iFit guide, and we are here in the Valley of the Kings in Luxor. And what I'm about to show you is one of the most impressive tombs in the Valley of the Kings. Now that you've seen the most famous tomb, King Tut, I'll show you how and why that's not that impressive. And this is what you really want to see. It's not that often that we get to open these tombs, so let me take you on this exclusive journey. Let's go. So here we are in the tomb of Ramesses the 5th and the 6th. Both of them were the great grandsons or cousins of the famous Ramesses II. This tomb was very special, and it's one of the most impressive tombs in the Valley of the Kings because of its size, but also, if you notice, I keep saying it belongs to two different kings, Ramesses the 5th and Ramesses the 6th. So it took them enough time to build a glorious tomb between two kings and bring it here. They were both very religious men, and they decided that their tomb was going to be about everything that will take place during the afterlife. In this tomb, we learn about everything that takes place in the afterlife. This is our prime source. On the walls of this tomb, you could see a massive amount of hieroglyphic inscriptions. Everywhere you go, these inscriptions are the language, are the Bible. This is the book of the religion. This is the book of the dead. There are 4 different types of Bibles in ancient Egypt. All 4 of them are here in this tomb. The stories I tell you about the afterlife and what every hour takes and the final judgment, I knew it because of this tomb. If you look up here, this is one of the most famous scenes in Egypt of the afterlife. This is the final judgment. And it's amazing to look at this and see how close it is, the judgment, to what happens today in the world. Right there, standing is God Osiris. He is the judge. He is the judge of all the gods. And in front of him, that is Goddess Ma'at with a scale in her hand. It's all etched out, but there's a scale in her hand. And behind them are the jurors. All these are the jurors. They are all the other gods of Egypt. And they will be the ones that decide the fate of the king. And if you look up there, there's a baboon with a stick in his hand on a boat, moving away with a creature of some sort. That creature was an alligator-faced hippopotamus or pig-like creature. That is the creature that is the door to hell. That is the creature that if the king's heart weighed heavier than the feather that is on that scale, then that king was not a good king, and he would be eaten by that creature, taken to hell in the afterlife. Rivers and rivers of fire. That's what it was called. And he's being pushed away by the baboon, which is a symbol of God Jehuti. God Jehuti is the God of wisdom. They knew already that those kings are not going to hell. They will live forever. This is a very important scene that takes you through every hour of the afterlife, with the king on a boat sailing in the Rossetau desert, the endless desert, and facing all the different creatures they have to fight, using the support of all the kings. Every part of this shows you exactly what happens or what they believed happened in the afterlife. And it's so close to today's religions, that sometimes it's eerie. Ancient Egyptians had the Holy Trinity. Ancient Egyptians had the mother, the son, and they had something similar to the Holy Spirit. They had all these concepts. They had heaven and they had hell. I can show you on the wall right here. This is called the river of fire. All that is river of fire. That is hell. That is the place we don't want to go to. That is the place that none of the ever recorded kings actually went to. And if you look down here, there's a creature that they all feared. It's the creature that ruled the Valley of the Kings. On both sides of the wall, down here, on the right, there's a snake-like creature. And at the end of the snake's head, a cobra with big wings. It's a feathered cobra. That feathered cobra is called Meret Sigit. Meret Sigit literally means the beloved of the silence, the beloved of the darkness. Meret Sigit was the god of darkness, the afterlife. She loved darkness, and that's exactly her name. And people feared Meret Sigit. In today's Egypt, we still say that a creature of some sort will come and take you to darkness when you die. When someone dies, we say he was taken to darkness by that creature. And the reason we say that is because of the ancient Egyptian beliefs. Now you walk through that tomb and look at the ceiling. The ceilings of these tombs are the most impressive, because up there is where the night is, up there is where the darkness is, up there it explains exactly what happens in the afterlife, how all the kings will be supported. It is very important to mention that this tomb, when it was found, was completely stolen. Nothing was here. No treasure, no furniture. We don't know what anything was. And we know that later on we find different parts of this tomb, different statues that are from here, that are now in different museums, with their eyes plucked out. The statues that came out of this tomb had their eyes plucked out, and that's for a reason. We know from that the tomb raiders that attempted and stole this tomb were during the ancient Egyptian times. That's why we think this tomb was opened a week or two, a day or two, right after the burial of the king, and stolen because the eyes of the statues were plucked out. Because those thieves, the tomb raiders, knew and believed in the same ancient Egyptian religion, that if these statues see them, they will tell on them in the afterlife. They will tell Meret Sigit, the god of darkness, what they did. And they would lose on the most important facet of life. They would lose on the most valuable reason why they live. Immortality. Living forever. And that's why they pluck the eyes out. But also it's a way for us to know when was the tomb actually robbed. What era were those tomb raiders from? Because later on, people would come in to rob the tomb and they would steal the gold. The gold wasn't as valuable, the gold wasn't as rare back in the ancient Egyptian times, but it became much more valuable later on. And when we see a tomb that has no gold, we know that it happened during an era of 400 AD and above, because that's when all the gold was stolen. We know that from that era, 400 AD and above, during the Islamic era of Egypt, we know that those kings of Egypt at the time had the most gold ever. We have a story that one of those kings loved his daughter so much, and she married the prince of Baghdad, and he built her for her wedding day palaces all the way from Egypt all the way to Baghdad with golden domes. Golden domes. Where do you think they got all this gold from? Unfortunately, this was melted gold from tombs like this. The fact that we found all this treasure in King Tut's tomb, a treasure that fills a whole story in the Egyptian museum. There's so much treasure that was found in King Tut's tomb, and the size of King Tut's tomb is less than 1/10 the size of this tomb we're in right now. Think how much treasure would have been in this tomb on the day it was actually opened. How much treasure they buried with this king in comparison to King Tut's tomb. All of it was stolen. Most of it was melted and reused as domes for golden palaces. At the end of this tomb, and like many other tombs, is the burial chamber. And even though this tomb belongs to two kings, Ramesses V and Ramesses VI, we only found the sarcophagus for one, Ramesses VI. We only found the coffin for one, Ramesses VI. And we only found the mummy of Ramesses VI. And it's now in the Egyptian Museum. That mummy wasn't found here, it was found in a cache, which was another reason we know those tombs were getting robbed. The mummy was taken away and hidden in a cache with other royal mummies. But we never found Ramesses V mummy. We know that this is Ramesses V tomb as well, because his name was listed all the way through the beginning. And here's the story. Ramesses V was actually the young cousin of Ramesses VI. He ruled before his uncle. Ramesses V was the son or cousin of Ramesses IV, who ruled before him, 4th, 5th, 6th. And it seems like his uncle wasn't too happy about that. It seems like his uncle deserved the throne, Ramesses VI wanted the throne, and Ramesses V disappeared. Of course, all these numbers with 5th and 6th are numbers that we made up today based on how many kings were named the same thing. But at the time, they weren't called 5th and 6th. We know the difference between them because they have 4 different names. One is their birth name, one is their coronation name, and different names. It seems like Ramesses VI came in, took this throne from his own cousin, and he disappeared from history. We don't have his mummy, we don't have his coffin. And Ramesses VI took over, tried to erase the memory of Ramesses V, tried to erase the memory of his own cousin, and took over. Now you look up in the ceiling here, and you see one of the most famous depictions in ancient Egypt, Goddess Nut. Goddess Nut is the goddess of the sky. She is the reason why the sun comes back every morning for us here in the living world. And she's also the reason why the sun sets and rises every night in the world of the dead, in the afterlife. She transforms the sun from this world to the other world. Look at it. You will see the sun going on outside in the world of the living, and right at the goddess's mouth, you see her eating the sun. That's when she eats the sun, and in her body, it transitions into the afterlife, and it shines in the darkness for the afterlife, for everyone that lives for eternity. And right at the end of that, if you look at the other side, from her uterus, the sun is reborn into the world. Every day that happens. She is the reason for survival. Now, this tomb wasn't just used during the ancient Egyptian times, and wasn't just stolen and robbed during the ancient Egyptian times. It was robbed all the way afterwards, and at some point in history, there's a group of people that decided to live here, a group of people that were persecuted. During the Roman time, the Roman Empire, the Coptic Christians, the original Egyptian, ancient Egyptian descendants, the Coptic Christians that became Christians after Jesus, they were persecuted heavily by the Romans. All the stories that you know, how much torture and hell the Romans put the Coptic Christians into. Their only place, the only spots that were there for them to hide, was tombs and temples of ancient Egypt. They lived here. You could see each now and then a hole in the wall that shows that this was a little altar they prayed in. You could see sometimes places where they would have put something like curtains to create little rooms for themselves and their kids. These tombs were their houses. And you can also see something really special. They were then Christians, and they believed different things than what their grandfathers believed in ancient Egyptian religion. And if you look at the walls, you will see that very specific gods of ancient Egypt, like God Osiris, his face was chipped away because he doesn't exist anymore. Our Jesus exists, not God Osiris. We chip his face away. But also you've witnessed that the creature that takes people to hell also has been chipped away. Because at the time, the Christians that lived here couldn't wait. They knew that they were suffering all their life. They were holding against torture, and they were believing against torture because they were waiting for one thing and one thing only, heaven. So they went in and chipped away that creature that would take them to hell. This tomb survived through centuries, survived through lives. And when archaeologists of this century came in, the ceiling was all black, was all covered. None of these drawings appeared when this century archaeologists came in, because the Christians, the Coptic Christians that lived here, used candles, used light, and all the ceiling was black from that fire, from that candle. And when we came in and decided to clean the tomb out, make sure that it doesn't deteriorate more, all these colors popped back at us. But it's worth mentioning that none of these colors are restoration colors. None of any of the colors that you see on these walls are new colors. These are the ancient colors. These are the colors that date back to more than 3,000 years from today. They're still on the walls. This tomb is one of the most impressive tombs in the Valley of the Kings. Not the biggest, but one of the most impressive. One that we learned the most from. And there's little bits and pieces of this tomb that taught us something very valuable. If you look at this wall, you see all the colors there. You see the story. You see the beginning of the rest that doesn't exist. Well, the king died. There's no need to finish his tomb. There's no need to finish his colors. So this shows how unfinished the tomb was. Yet, the tomb is still impeccable. But from that we learn exactly how ancient Egyptians actually inscribe on the walls. We could see the layer of plaster that is fresh and new. We could see all the hieroglyphs being sculpted in. We can see the beginning of the red marks that sketch them. They would sketch red marks on the walls, etch the hieroglyphics, and then paint them later after the plaster. So this tomb taught us so much about our history. It's one of my favorite tombs in Egypt. Yes, all the colors on these walls are the ancient colors. All these colors are colors from 3,000 years old. And this tomb is the prime source. This is where we found all the information we have, all the information we know about the afterlife, about the final judgment. It all came from here. And this tomb was also the reason why King Tut's tomb was hidden for the longest time, because it was right on top of it. This tomb here hid King Tut's tomb for all this time, till 1922. Any Egyptologist, any archaeologist, including myself, hopes for nothing else but finding a new King Tut's tomb. And there are tombs in the Valley of the Kings that we haven't found. There are kings that we know of that we haven't found tombs for yet. And if we find another tomb today, if it's been hidden that well all this time from us, then it was probably hidden that well from the tomb raiders. If we find another tomb today, it will be the discovery of the century. We will find treasure over treasure. We will learn so much about our missing history. It's a day I look forward for. It's a day you should look forward to. This is it. Great job. Well done, well done. We've arrived at the end of this tomb and we made it through. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed those stories and joined me all the way through history, through the tomb raiders, through the king and his cousin, and through the colors on the walls that still survive today. Thank you for joining me, and great job. This is Ramy Romani, your iFit guide.